Hashem.
Don't know when you're leaving. Okay.
Okay. Let me go. Okay, everybody said, let me learn Beza Hashem. Beza Hashem, let me learn the Sugya, Gishmaka Sugya. We started the Sugya already. And now let's try to Kaveya Masmerim. Very interesting over here. Very interesting over here. The Mishnah that talks about Hevi Lefanov, you've seen this already for the course of 1 week already. Hevi Lefanov, you brought in front of him a Maliach. Tchila, you have to bench right on the Maliach and you pay to the pass. Come to Rashi. Interesting Rashi. Rashi says, Peres Guinnesser are Mesukim and they're very sweet. And you have to eat them Elad Melech Harbe, Kidei that the Mesika shouldn't bother him. And the pass is tuffle to the Peres. Kum Taisvis, very important Taisvis. Factaisis Akasha. Factaisis, Vimtaimar Peres is Iker. And the Maliach is the tuffle. Factaisis, it seems like what's the Iker and what's the tuffle? It seems like the herring or whatever this guy is the Iker. So he says, it seems like the Peres are the Iker and the herring is the tuffle. Says Taisvis, the Yishloimar, at least in the first teretz, Myrish Ochel Paris base in
464. 464.
In cases we didn't eat the Paris. But then Taisvis says, Inami, Bishasha Ochel Paris Ginaser, Loya Yesham Adayin Maliach Upas, Viloya Yadeya, that he's going to need the bread. Taisvis introduces us over here to a gewaldige chiddush and a brand new musik. Taisus introduces us over here that if you have a situation of where the bread you didn't know was coming, or for that matter, you didn't know the tuffle was coming. Is mechadish Taisus to us over here that if you didn't know that the tuffle is coming, and it's, I guess, also not the derech that the tuffle should come, because if it's a derech the tuffle should come, then that's a different story. But if it's not the derech that the tuffle should come, and you didn't know that the tuffle is going to come, is mechadish Taisus over here, a gewaldik and afkamina la'alocha, that in that case you have to make a bracha on the tuffle, and the ikar does not part of the tuffle. Says Taisus, you didn't know who passed the lay yada sheyech l'shli by machmas hamasikas. He didn't lay aisha madayin the maliach. He didn't know that they was going to need to come on to them. Normally, b'amis, it could be that the other things would be pattered. But Taisus comes along over here and says, if you didn't know, so then the Iker doesn't pat the tuffle. The Chazon Ish in Arachaim, Simach of Zion's test, makes a very big deal out of this Taisus. He says, Mavur from this Taisus, the site of the Chakir that we spoke about already, that does Iker patter the tuffle, Kipshutai, or does the tuffle Dafnishkin bracha doesn't need a bracha b'chlal? Says the Chazon Ish over here, it's clear that the tuffle needs a bracha because we found the situation of where for sure it's tuffle to the food. There's no question over here that the bread is tuffle and everything is tuffle, but you didn't know it was coming, so your bracha didn't work on the tuffle. Says the Chazon Ish, it's Mefurish in Taisvis, that the tuffle needs a bracha, but it's included in the bracha of the Iker. Sadkam, that you didn't know about it, ain't pirushay the tuffle ain't sarach bracha. Rather that it goes on it. HILCHOS, kishalaya tuffle b'shas bracha, or loya daita. If you didn't know about it, so then there's no bracha. In other words, the way it works is that it becomes one food in essence, and it's a tuffle chelik of that one big food. So therefore, your bread becomes a sha'akol, it becomes a maliach, or your bread becomes the peiros, it becomes a breitz in a situation. But if you didn't know about it, now what bracha are you going to make? We're going to talk about in a moment. But Al-Kapanim, that's a Yisayid number one of the Rabbi say. I think people don't always realize this. You have to, this could be Negela Maisa. Person is sitting there, he's having crackers. He's eating crackers by himself, stamazoi, and in walks his wife with some, and he was looking in the fridge, let's make it an extreme case. He was looking all around for something to dip these crackers in. Is there any hummus in the house? He's looking, he's looking hummus. And then, he says, what can I do? Pas b'melach tochal. That's our sugya. Pas b'meliach tochal. What can you do? Then, 20 minutes later, his wife walks in. He's holding by the last cracker. And his wife says, shut of the cracker. Essen mit hummus. And she takes out the hummus from the bag. She puts it on the table. Ask the hummus. I think most people would say, cracker and hummus. You don't make a bracha on the hummus. And he probably would not make a bracha on the hummus. But in our case over here, he didn't know the hummus was coming. As a matter of fact, he was davening for the hummus to come and it didn't come. Soy b'soy, b'kai govna, the chayri has to make a bracha on the chumash. Chumash itself is a big shayla. Who remembers from Reish Beis, Siv Zayin, what's the bracha on chumash? Is it a bar priya eitz? Bar priya dama, because it's oymid lekach, or do you say it's a shahakal? We'll see in a minute. Since it's a tuffle, it could be any ways you're going to have to make a shahakal. Am I right? Everybody say, I would have thought in that case, most people are just going to take the cracker, dip it in the chumash, and not realize that they have to make a bracha. What do you say? Everybody say?
Problem.
Chayra. And then I thought of another case. There was once a Maisa that, actually before we get to the Maisa, and Ramosha in the Igros Moshe Kallus Siman Daled, we mentioned it last time. He says the same raya and the same side. The ikar has to part to the tuffle. Not that the tuffle darf nicht bracha. The tuffle darf the bracha, but it gets the bracha from the ikar. Nafkamina, nimlach, nafkamina, if you didn't know. So bezaya, let me clear in a shaila. Medicine, we cleared this. Who remembers many shiurim ago, long time ago, when we thought HILCHOS BRACHOS was going to be easy and smooth sailing. So why have I got it been choosing such a? This is not for a koilo. You're supposed to be learning Taroivis or HILCHOS Shabbat, and then we found out what HILCHOS BRACHOS is. But way back when we didn't know, we spoke about the shaila of medicine. Way back. Does medicine with a taste require a bracha? And one of the svaras that was thrown around came from Shlomo Zalman Zichrono Livracha, like many of our svaras. Shlomo Zalman is brought in the Shmir Shabbos, in Perek Mem, in HaOra Reish Lamed Aleph, and there's a ganze nidin over there about does medicine with a taste. What is taste? You have a medicine which is kol kula no taste and kol kula not oichel. They put inside of it, some type of a taste to make it bearable. Cleared for Shlomo Zalman, do you make a bracha on that medicine? So we cleared. What are the svaras? One of the svaras that we said back then was that, well, the ikar obviously is the medicine. So maybe you don't make a bracha on the medicine because it's patul, it's tuffle to the ikar. Patul to the ikar, and the ikar davnish can bracha. So if the ikar doesn't need a bracha, then the tuffle doesn't need a bracha. But now you're seeing from Rabbeinu the Chazon Ish and Ramosha and Mamish the Pashim Shat and Taisis, you're seeing not like that. You're seeing Mamish not like that. You're seeing that. How could you say that? Hooray, the tuffle zikr needs a bracha, but the tuffle is patted with the ikar. So what happens if I have a moifis? I have an ikar that there's no bracha on. Hey, Rabbi, how are you eating without a bracha? It's called medicine. So now I have medicine that doesn't need a bracha, and that's the ikar. Do I say that the tuffle needs a bracha? The tuffle needs a bracha. You can make a bracha on the ikar, patters the tuffle. But let's say you didn't make a bracha on the ikar, so then where's your pattering of the tuffle? Rabbi, say b'zay sekum tois. That I should need a bracha on medicine. And Rosh Zalman danned on this. I'll read you his lashon over here. You talk in the B'kai Govna, Einem Mevarich Klal Al Ikar, Mevarich Shaper Al Tuffle, V'kein Mistaber. Kain Roshleim Zalman is telling us something's mistaber. That means Kol HaTorah Kula just told us this makes sense. It's not the pshat that a tuffle doesn't need a bracha. Daf the bracha, but it gets the bracha. And then he goes on and he talks about a Mishnah Berurah and Siman Kuf Daled and Sivkot in Lamed Daled, in Lamed Taz, excuse me, making a bracha on Ma'at Sukkar to pat the coffee. Okay. Then Rosh Hashanah goes on. And he says, this is brought in the Shmir Shabbos. Re'ei Nishmas Avram. Shlomo Zalman seems to have been chayzer. Chayzer again with Shlomo Zalman because of she'ein mevarich al trufa. Now, what's this all about? So this might be a different svar. Maybe you could say mat emes. Who remembers the svar of mat emes? Mat emes. Now, flavored times, which I'm being asked over here, I'm not sure about. By Black. I just found out his family. Don't worry, it's the cost of nicht Geld. But the flavored Tums, I still remember in the shul that Heilige Alte Yid was giving him out as candies. I mean, it could be that, maybe he shouldn't. I think these things give ulcers. But, some people, they view them as mamish candies. Now, I don't know if there's a sherim on these things today. It's been a while, everybody said. But the point is, I don't know if flavored Tums is doimit to bidiyuk what we're talking about. We had another svar back then, just a little bit of a chazar is always good, of mat emes. maybe I don't want the taste. I could care less. Just like when I take the food and I spit it out. What do I want? And we saw this tzad that even if you swallow it, but you're just trying to not kavanas achila. So maybe also over here, the liquid is not kavanas achila. What's that sweetness? It's not kavanas achila. It's just enabling me to get it down. But maybe there's a big chilek. Maybe here I want this whole chefza to be in my stomach. I do want this chefza in my stomach. By the food that he's tasting to see if it's good, he doesn't even want it in his stomach. He just, why should he spit it out? Which pasnish, he'll spit it down, which pastio. So he doesn't even want it in his stomach. That's called ein kavanas achila. Mashein kain, when you're dealing with the medicine, I want it in my stomach and I want it in there. So maybe that's not matemis. Maybe you would have to make a bracha, but maybe you could say, no, I want the medicine down there, but I don't want the taste down there. That part, I just need to get it down and then it could get out. It's very difficult. If you remember what we said back then, there was a svara that was thrown around from a Goyin Shlomo Zalman, which was that maybe it doesn't have a shame of an oichel. Maybe the Tekana Brachos is only an oichel and this doesn't have a shame of an oichel. So al kapanim halacha l'maisa on medicine, no, it is kedai to perhaps pater. It is kedai to perhaps pater. Okay, that's a big, tall order to ask a child to pater and whatnot. It was a big machlekes back then, and certainly is sigarnish pashit. Sigarnish pashit.
So
Now,
the Rav telling us that you can't just drink water you can't make a shakl or not make a shakl.
That's going to be next week's share, that you can't just make a bracha on water and pater, because unless you're thirsty for the water, you won't be able to make the bracha on the water.
Because it maybe not be shaislet summer, right? Next week's year.
Yeah.
So you're stuck. It's one of those stopping times you're stuck.
Yeah. So I was given a bracha as metarnish. I'm being machriach the oilam not to get sick.
I understand, but those of us who have to take pills kadei shlo yechla.
Yeah, but most of us that are taking pills, those pills don't have a taste. It's usually more for the kinder and das. I mean, sometimes you have some like
they don't have taste. I agree. They don't have taste. So therefore you don't need anything. Therefore, the water doesn't need a taste.
That's more for kids and whatnot. The only thing is that, I don't know, everybody say, when I give my kids the flavored acimals and things like that, they really like the taste. So it could be balabatish. It could just be that, if the kids would take it, and they would love to drink it, we don't let them. Even though we said a few stars today, but if they mamish like it, they have these vitamins, they have taste. The kids love them. They taste like candies and everything. It's that it's not called food, but that's as far as the sugi that we spoke about. But I just wanted to bring out the idea that you can't say that it doesn't need a bracha. That you can't say, because there's no such thing that a tafel doesn't need a bracha. So you can't say, well, on the ikar, there's no bracha, so on the tafel, there's no bracha. Chalila. When there's no bracha on the ikar, then now you got to make a bracha on the tafel. Okay, we're down to other stars. Now, last week, and before we go into the new part of the sugya, we learned about this cholent, and my lave told me that the big pieces today and I don't mean like a mushed up cholent, but sometimes you have a cholent, it's got this massive piece of meat. I remember Abai say, we used to get a cholent in yeshiva today. I mean, they bring in cows and goats, and they used to get like, you would be koishi, there was like a string in there, suffix fleshik, suffix milchik, suffix bar, suffix food. Today you get this great piece of meat, and you get a great petaf, a ganze bulba, a ganze kartoffel, dust, and you have all the barley. I don't know. It could be that we spoke last week. Maybe it got all mixed together. The Chayyadam says anyways, you make 3 brachas. Mishabura did not. Mishabura clearly said they're all together and whatnot. If you have barley in every spoon, you make 1 bracha of mezainis. I just felt it might be a chiddush, because if you're eating it, each spoon is separate. You have a separate spoon of meat. 5 times, 4 times, 3 times, and a separate spoon of kishka. It's fair to say that that's one food. So I was looking for an eitzah. Last week we spoke out. I saw that in the Sefer, Makor Bracha is an important Sefer because he was the trailblazer in HILCHOS, Dayan Kraus. His grandchildren learning by me in Yerushalayim Kodesh. He was the trailblazer in Kitzur Sfarim in general. His cousin, I think if I'm not mistaken, his first cousin, the Shmir Shabbos, was the trailblazer in Shmir Shabbos, Kleimar in Shabbos Kitzur Sfarim. in our door, and he was the trailblazer in HBrachos. So all the BRACHOS books that you see on the shelf, they all kula miroya echos nitnu. So he writes over there in the 23rd siman in Oishei. In some volumes, it's in the 64th page. He has an idea over there, which I don't know how pashut it is, but certainly in our case, it's pashut. He says over there that if you take the tuffle and put it out of the mixture for a while, and then you eat it, then he says, bevada, you can make 2 brachos. La'isa lahasir.
What's the advice? You take the potatoes out.
Take out the potato and you take out, like separate it a little bit in the plate. I had cholent, and Wednesday night I gave the shir last week. Thursday night the Elam came over and we had cholent. And I did that. And I saw that it's anyways how I was eating. You eat the meat, you eat the potato. That's how anyways you're eating. I mean, first you'll eat the barley because mezainis, but I saw anyways that's an essence how most of us eat. And when you don't have these, I'm talking about the specific cholents that are not mished with very, very small pieces. I'm talking about today on mole, especially if it's a Thursday night cholent. You got a big piece of meat, a big potato, and a big barley. So if you separate them somewhat on the plate and you leave it like that for a bit, it definitely is a makim to be makel. I don't know what you call it, makel machmer, but to make 3 brachos. My question to the oilam is: you've been learning the sugya for 2 weeks. Is what I just said to you a chiddush klape what you heard from the other, let's say Talmidei Chachamim Muflagim, the real Talmidei Chachamim Muflagim, not the other ones, the real ones. Is it a chiddush to the oilam what I just said? Vinish vi yav d'chai adam. Okay. Now, if I said that's part 1.
Before you go, how does the Rav Lamaisa eat cholent? Instruct us halacha lamaisa.
So if it would be like one of these mushy cholents and it has a lot and has barley in every spoon, I'm making a mezainis. If it's going to be one of these cholents where everybody's distinct, I think I'm going to try to separate them, do a little segregation over here. And then put the potato there and the meat over there, and then I'm going to eat them separately. And then if you wind up eating some of it together, that's fine. But I'm going to have some separation of it because it is a shver shaila, and that's what I would think.
The cholent your kids would buy in that famous kosher store in Gula there. I got the name. What is the bracha on that cholent? It's all
Hadar Gula?
Yeah, Hadar Gula, yeah.
So Hadar Gula's cholent was the one that was here last Thursday night, and it was big. It was big pieces, but I take no responsibility or a charayas. It could be next week. It's going to be mushy. I don't know. When it's all mushy azah, then that's a zikr ein zach. And that zikr you have to do like the Mishnah Berurah, even though there's a potato here and a piece of meat here. But that's one shtick. That's one shtick.
Okay.
Does it make a difference the size of the potatoes? Like they're big potatoes, they don't really get much.
It definitely gives to the feel. When you have one greise kartoffel azach, man, it's hard to say that it's one shtick. If you have a suffix and you mush it all together, that's the Mishnah Berurah zeitza. That's also. Now, like this, a few things before we get into I want to try to get to cases, but I just want to make sure some things are clear. There were some difficulties in the Mishnah Berurahs over here. For example, the Rama brings down a situation. The Yeshayim Ramosif Aleph imatopel chaviv alav mivarich alav v'akakak mivarich alaikar. It's a great chiddush from the Rama. If you have a tuffle that you love hummus. So then he says, yeah, you got to make a bracha on it, and then afterward the top make on the ikar. The Mishnah Berurah on this, and Sivkot in Hay, in Chart C and Tesva. First, I just want to clarify some things in the sugya before we get practical. I think these things were probably a bit complicated, so I just want to make a sikum. The Rama says there's a situation where you make the bracha on the chaviv if it's a tuffle, if it's a chaviv. The Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot in Hay argues, and he brings the Mogen Avram and the Chart C and Sivkot in Tesva also. He made the Mogen Avram because that even though the Or Zarua
466.
In the Or Zarua, it's mefurish like the Mogen Avram. In ein hatznoin ikar mevarich al azayis. But what comes out practical in that case is that ikar v'tafel doesn't matter if the tafel is chaviv. That's rule number 1 I want to give the oil. Rule number 2 is, and this is very, very important also, is there's a Mishnah Berurah over here, which I'll start with a story and tell me what the Olam thinks. Somebody was at a Kiddush. The stories do not necessarily, the speaker does not necessarily advocate the stories. But somebody was at a Simcha and they were getting somebody to drink. They were trying to get somebody to drink. So they told him, here, it's a cup of water. Take a drink, at least for the picture, so that it looks like there's a l'chaim, it'll look like a l'chaim, So he took it, and he made a shahakol for the video, he made a shahakol, and did he get a surprise? 90, what's it called? 96%. You guys know the Maisa, right? There's a fellow who comes to the doctor. That fellow comes to the doctor, and he says, the doctor tells him, look at this. You have water on the lungs. Well, it must be from the drinking. He turns to his wife and he says, you see, I knew that 4% would kill me. Verstehst? 96. And he gives him a cup of the good stuff and he drinks it. And he drinks it. And now he knows the bracha vatal. He drinks, a good, and whoa, it's a fire. It's a burnt a fire. So they quickly run. They give him a piece of bread, some pilkel over there. What's the din now? The bread is definitely tuffle to the vodka. He didn't have a havamin of washing here, b'chlal. He's not interested. He just came in to make a mazel tov and say l'chaim. He didn't plan on eating the bread. And now, l'chayra, that bread is tuffle. But Rabbi Isai, he definitely didn't have kavan on that bread. Wasn't that the rule that Taisus taught us that the Chazon Ish made such a big deal out of? He definitely didn't have kavan on that bread. So did the ikar of the vodka pater the tuffle of the bread? For sure not. He didn't have he was having the bread. So now when he's running, he has to go and make a bracha on the bread. Now, wait a minute. What bracha is he going to make on the bread? Does he make a moitzi or does he make a shahakol? Now that he's making a bracha on the tuffle, in a situation where you make a bracha on the tuffle, which the case that the Poskim discussed, the Beis Yosef discussed, is an oichel that was tuffle. He wants to eat the tuffle tchila. So there's a Mishnah Berurah quoting a Mogen Avram in Zivkot and Daled. He says that l'chayra, in general, when you have the tuffle tchila, you should make its bracha. And then he says, Elim Kena Iker, the Iker,
466.
The Iker Birchotze Shahakol, Memela, the tuffle is nifter with it. So where does this leave us? Come to Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot in Dalit over here. Mishnah Berurah talks about a case of an oichel maliach. It's our case, right? Schnapps, maliach, whatever. Schnapps, and the pas is tuffle. And in the time of when he ate the schnapps, the maliach, that's the case of Mishnah Berurah, he didn't plan on eating bread. So what bracha does he make on the bread? In this case, come the Mishnah Berurah, and I'll read you his lashon. One moment, where's the Mishnah Berurah?
Right there in front of
Dalit, and he says you make a shahakol. Again, everyone have the case? I'm trying to give a little bit of a flavor to the case, which I think was a little bit difficult here to read in the Mishnah Berurah. Again, I have a vodka. I didn't plan on having the vodka. Kavachayim, I didn't plan on having the bread. So this is an example, a classic example of where you're going to have to make a bracha on the tuffle because I was nimloch and I didn't have a havamina. You're not going to say, Al das balabayas over here, Baisa. He's for sure going to give a mishaberach to the balabayas for what he just did to him. So he had no kavana to be making, to be eating the bread. If he would have had kavana, it could be that it's potted with the schnapps. But he didn't have any havamina of eating the bread. So now you have to make a bracha on the tuffle. When I made a bracha on the ikr and I didn't plan on eating the tuffle, to make a bracha on the tuffle, that's taisis. What bracha do I make on that tuffle now when I didn't plan on having it? And especially bread. Aftem kum the Mishnah Berurah and Zivkot and Daled, the way he learns the Mogen Avram, which is a big rash over here, he learns that you make a shahakol. Says the Mishnah Berurah, came into tuffle, on the bread. Tafilu k'shayat tuffle of fanav, even if it was in front of him. But im ayadaita b'shas bracha lechol gama tuffle. He said, okay. But then he goes on, Avalim ain't a ruggle bakach. But
Make
the
it yellow.
I didn't plan on eating the bread. Let's sarich levarich ala tafel. You must make the bracha on tafel. As mevarich ala tafel rak shahakol. The alkoponim tafel who? Because nachalt it's a tafel. Matsid berkosa ikaris. The Dumi brings down the case, the Dumi to the Ramah. So that's a base halach l'maisa. In that case, if you didn't plan on having the tafel, and it's a negay case, I'm not saying such a meshigadik case. Guy takes a shot of whiskey and it's too strong for him. He's just looking around for something and he finds a cracker and he's not interested at all in the cracker. He's just trying to get rid of this miserable taste. So then what bracha would he make on that guy? And he didn't plan, let's say it's a case of where he didn't plan on eating or whatever. You have to know what the case is, but let's say it's a case that he didn't plan on eating. So in that case, he would make a shahakal on the cracker. Crystal clear, my friends and family?
Yeah, so and the Shbur says the Makara this is the Ramah of Tafel before the Iker. Same shahakal.
Correct. And it's the way, it's a little complicated. I don't want to go out of sight into it, but this is the way the Mishabur is learning the Magen Avraham. There's a fight in how to learn this Magen Avraham. If anybody wants to do further research, you could look in the Machzah Shekel, who Mishabur is arguing on, but that's a bit complicated for right now. Now, the Mishabur, in essence, over here, is discussing a major shiloh. There's another major shiloh over here in this neighborhood, which is when a person wants to eat the tuffle first. Now, the first and most important thing you need to know is the Mishabura says in Sivkot and Yud and Shard C and Sivkot and Chavdalit, avoid the situation. Don't eat the tuffle first. You're not supposed to get into the situation. You're supposed to eat the yikr first. Sometimes the person's having a cracker and he wants to take a little dip of the hummus or whatever. No, don't do that. Have the mezainis first, have the cracker first, and pater the tuffle. Mishabur says to avoid the situation. That's first of all, right? So where's it Nageya? Most about that case isn't a Nageya. Where's it Nageya is I find sometimes at the Kiddush. Now I have to tell you, everybody say this is one of those things that if you learned in Eretz Yisrael, you understand. If you come like me from the Haim, you're not going to understand this. But in Eretz Yisrael, Sedu Azach, in the Haim Megrifen a Yushalmi Kogel. It's the Oilam Veis, was it das Yushalmi, das nicht Lokshin Kogel. Okay? Bei uns in the Haim, it gehat Lokshin Kogel, das ist nicht Lokshin Kogel. Das ist Yushalmi Kogel. Why is it called Yushalmi Kogel? Because Yushalmis had a very big problem. Yushalmi is afraid of being anything in Diktuk Aloche. So they're afraid that they're going to eat too much cake at the Kiddush. It's interesting. You ever come to Shalmi Kiddush? It's not such a problem, but okay, right? So Kanira, they're afraid it would turn into some kind of geschmack Kiddush. So they have to find something that even if you eat too much of it, you won't have to bench. What's that? Yushalmi Kugel, because it's Batsim Lakshin. And Lakshin, we spoke about this in HILCHOS, as you all remember. There was a Shiloh of Challah, and there was a Shiloh of now when we put it back together again. Is it called bread? Is it not a bread? We came out that it's probably not a bread. And therefore you can eat 30 pieces of Yushalmi Kugel. And when you get out of the hospital, you don't have to bench. You'll just make ala michya. Adkan, what we spoke about. However, you must know, Rabbi Isai, that Yushalmi Kugel comes with a pickle. If you don't eat that pickle, they won't make a shidduch with you. Now, when you ask the great Yushalayimers, what's the lumdus of that pickle? The people that versteh, the Mevinim, they understand that Yushalmi Kugel has a peppery taste to it, and you have to offset it with the pickle. It's been 20 Kenai Nahara, almost a kimat a half a yovel I've been over here at Tzena Kedosha. I still have not been zeicha to understand the seed hayushalmi kogel. I eat it with the pickle, and also I sit in the front and they're looking at me. Verstehst? So I eat the pickle and I eat yushalmi kogel. I'm not starting up. When in Yerushalayim, do like the Yerushalayimers. When you're in Rome, never do like a Roman. But I eat that pickle. But I've seen this with my own eyes. They will eat the kogel and they won't make a bracha on the pickle. Ich hab gesehen. And they hold it stuffle. And Shlomo Zalman is quoted as saying, that you eat with the kugel, because it's tuffle to the kugel. He brings it
carrot on the fish. Why is it different than carrot on the fish?
No, the carrot on the fish, das is taka schenkheit. That's just a beautification. It's not here. It's not the beautification. Here, I want a pickled taste. I like the pickle. They have a whole lumdis that the pickle is tough to shops. I don't understand the pickle. I eat the kugel. I eat the pickle. By me, it's just, I'm afraid to say, you should know, my door is closed now. The shades are down. If they would hear this fragnish, they would oust me as the Rav. Very still, these things they take very seriously. The HaLACHOS was the Rav in Brisk. One morning, they tell him, you're out, you're fired. No questions, goodbye. Kol tov. What was the story? The story was that night, somebody who was in labor and gadafta a candle. Who has a candle at 2 o'clock in the morning? Nor the Rav. The Rav is sitting in there. They come to the Bach. The lights are out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Pelops. No questions asked. The next morning, you're out. A Rav in Brisk has to be awake 2 o'clock in the morning learning. You're out. Kitzer, his wife asked him afterward, why didn't you tell them? Tell them. Well, they didn't ask. Why didn't you tell them? What was? The Bach, we got a salary in Brisk, which is, there was no salary in Brisk. So Mamela didn't have money. So Mamela, he had to learn the whole day. He didn't have money for candles. Fancy people, they had geld for candles. So he had to learn the whole entire day. And then he had to chazer his learning Balpeh the entire night. So the Bach stayed up all night learning, but Balpeh. Shine. So by me, Rabbi said the shades are down and the door is closed. If they find out that I eat Yerushalmi kugel and pickle and I don't consider them to be a oneness, and who knows what can happen. Tomorrow I might wind up in Lakewood with the oilam. I mean, I don't understand it. If you don't understand it, you make a bracha on the kugel and you make a bracha on the pickle. But these guys understand it. Mela, nafkamina, is by them. They can't make it. I mean, anyways, it's a problem of a bracha of kedim and brachas. But a mol, by the kiddush, they're in the middle of bringing out the Yerushalmi kugel, and the person had a whole cup of wine, let's say, so he doesn't have a problem with kiddush makim suda. Okay, or it's coming, summer makel, and he wants to make the bracha on the pickle. Don't do that. According to Mishabru, you can't do that because don't eat the pickle, don't eat the tuffle before the ikra. If you hold that a pickle is tuffle to the kugel, then you can't do it. Now again, I don't fully understand this, and I think most of the American oilam also doesn't. My feeling is that you're one of the ancient mention over here that might understand this. You understand it?
About I understand it. There are some.
I had a feeling. I knew it.
There are some foods like sushi, even that's the svara, where the combination food. Don't tell me. I don't know. Maybe I heard it was Montefiore who invented it. Montefiore invented it. But I have a different kasha. Why did the pasha kol sheyeshbay finish? That's it.
Why what?
It's kol sheyeshbay. It's
not one food. It's two separate foods. Kol sheyeshbay is when it's one food.
One food. Why isn't it one food? Because it wasn't cooked together or baked together.
It's spaghetti and meatballs.
Just going on top of it. That's all it is.
It's, by the way, Rabbi Say, it doesn't come like that in the Kiddush anymore. A piece of Yerushalmi kugel with a pickle. There's Yerushalmi kugel with pickles in a whole bowl, and you take it, mess this up, and they don't even eat it together, Rabbi Say. They eat kugel then pickle, kugel then pickle.
Depends where you live. Depends where you live, as you say. There's no question that the mores of the Makkah define the foods. That's very pashut. They hold, and Bate Ungaran, they hold the Yerushalmi kugel, the Kepter Yerushalmi kugel is a kugel to pickle. It's not so schwer. I mean, Listen. They asked the child Chaim Kanievsky, "Ha'ikol kugel and malafafine? Do you make a bracha on the malafafine? In mekavin rak latafel, ein sarich levarich. If by you the pickle is a tafel, mitarnished, no bracha. Reb Nissen Karelitz, malafafine chamutz, have a tafel, no bracha. Imeinika kavanasol the malafafone. If that's not what your ikar kavanah admits, if your ikar kavanah is for the pickle, you want a pickle. You're not eating the pickle as a hechatimtza to eat the kugel. So then fine. But I give the Rav an American equivalent. Onions on top of, let's take the bread off, and you're eating the hamburger alone, and it's fried with an onion on top. But this is one Michael Tzanish.
So there, there,
July 4th.
Because of the, what?
But it's guessing July 4th, Nechten. You don't remember July 4th. Yeah.
Oh, maybe we'll get there. But it's a big nafkamina, Rabbi Say. That means if you have the carrot on the fish, don't eat the carrot. And you believe in these ideas that the carrot is there just for a picture, just for a shenkai. So then you don't eat the carrot first. Eat first the fish and pater up the carrot. Now let me get invited. Now we come, my boy say, to one of the most geschmacka, negeya de kesugis and gans, HILCHOS brachos, crackers, tuna, crackers, everything with crackers. The Mishnah Berurah is kuf samech ches got in mem hey, which I taken through the Maimakaimis. I'm sure the Olim saw it. Over here in this Mishnah Berurah, it seems to have two klalim. Mishnah Berurah and kuf samech ches got in mem hey. And he's talking about, he seems to have new rules. Our sug over here is in Simon Reish Yud Beis, and he does talk about mezainis and sivkat involved. But over there in kuf samech ches sivkat mem hey, he seems to have a whole set of rules. To break it down, Mishnah Berurah sounds like rule number one is that when mezainis is baked together, now I don't mean barley and I don't mean a granola bar or something. I mean layered foods. We're talking about some type of a layered food, very important, because if you have a mixed salad, Rabbi Yisai, of course that's one food and we have to figure out what the bracha is. I mean, I shouldn't say of course, if you're going with the Mishnah Berurah, not the Chayodam. But the Mishnah Berurah over here, Lake Tzu, a grace side, is that if it's baked together, and it's even though there's levels, they're not mamish mixed. It's baked together though. Right? So then the Mishnah Berurah is going to have, we'll see in a moment, different types of rules on layered foods. Again, a mezainis product, which is layered, not mixed. It's going to have its set of rules. And there's going to be one set of rules for when it's baked together. And then the Mishnah Berurah says another time is if it is coming lalafes. So these are we have to figure out, are you coming to eat it as a help to the mezainis, number one? A bunch of factors. Number one, is it layered or is it arangemished? Number two, is it coming to help the mezainis? You want to taste with the mezainis. Number three, or do you want it separately? You want the taste of this, the tuna and the cracker. Number three, is it baked together? All these are going to be conveying the factor to figure out what you make, what brachas you make when I'm having crackers and whatnot, etc. Now, the Mishnah Berurah and Sivkat and Vav, by us, says, Im oichel bas kisnin im gvina, you have with cheese, the cracker with cheese, even though you want the cracker, you want the cheese, you very much want it, still you make on the cracker and you pop to the cheese.
467.
Anytime you have that.
You know,
Next to the
467.
tuffle. So if I'm having cheese and crackers, Mishnah Berurah seems to have just paskined, you make a mezainis and that's it. Hummus and cracker, that's it. Wie arbeitet das zusammen mit dem Mishnah Berurah in Kuf Samech Ches Memei? In Kuf Samech Ches Memei Pashit, the Davka Shebeis Afia, it was nefe b'yachad. Aval im avad dovshinin, you bake the cracker itself, and then afterward you put on the merkacha. Mishnah Berurah says it's not tefela. So what's going on over here? Ain't a merkachas bolalafes. Steer Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah by us says that if you have a cracker and you put on it tuna, cheese, who knows what, you make a bracha the mezainis and you pater up the tuna. The Mishnah Berurah Kuf Samech Ches Sivkat Mem says not like that. He seems to say if you baked it together, it's one thing. If you didn't bake it together, Mishnah Berurah seems to say that it's two brachas. Says the two brachas are one. Rabbi says negaya every single food. Crackers and tuna, crackers and cheese, crackers and hummus. Do I make one bracha or two brachas? So it would seem that the pshat in the Mishnah Berurah, and imagine Eimal David, Eimal Sot is what you have to say, is that not all spreads are created equal. Sometimes you have a spread, you have a little hummus, you have a little avocado, you have a little cheese, something like that. And it's clearly coming, sometimes it's probably usually totally in amounts, but it's really coming that, you're having a cracker with the tuna taste, a cracker with the cheese taste, a cracker with the hummus taste. Usually a spread is clearly going to be just the taste. We'll get to the herring, avada. So, b'kai govna, you'll make a bracha on the cracker and pat to the spread. But amol, you're having tuna for lunch. with crackers, and you're having, sometimes it's a thicker tuna. It's not just a tiny little smear of the tuna. I must admit, it's not going to be so easy to be kaveya where the border is between lalafes and, where I want it as its egena. It's not
Back
clear.
to 467.
Not clear, but clearly we have some direction. If it's baked together, it's oneness. You have a cherry pie, so it's baked together. So then that's a mezainis, even though it's separate entities. If it's clearly just a shmear, the other extreme, just a cracker with some hummus, clearly that's a mezainis. The cases that become difficult, I would think it's pashut if you have a cracker with a piece of meat on it, and I think even herring. I think that's clearly 2 brachos. Sometimes you have the onions. Okay, so that I hear. The onions is a zazach, which I think the most, I don't know, sometimes you have the guy, he wants more of the onion than he wants the, and definitely that becomes an issue. And I would say that if it's not clear, you have to try to pater. Now, very interesting.
Doesn't the Mishabura show the Kfeid HaRav? Doesn't Mishabura in the Sharatzin Chafal raise his steer himself with the lekach? He makes a chiluk here. The ain't a daimel masha kasabnu.
You're in Reshut Beis, not Kostamachas, correct?
In Reshut Beis, yeah. We can show it to you on the screen if you wish.
No, I have it. Vein daimel masha kasabnu mikoidim. Dim kavanat b'shil atafel gam gegon sheisi yayish. Doesn't mean it'll be yachad. Beseder, but hagufa. The v'staber machaychel lafes bevadu tafel. Beseder, but then I have a steerer than in the Mishabura, because the Mishabura, when it comes to Kuf Samachas, told me that that I make in the same case. Ein naser mekachas tefela, vein mekachas ba lalafes. He says that it's not coming to be malafis. So is it coming to be malafis or is it not coming to be malafis?
Make Vav yellow. Make the first hand yellow so I should see the steerer. Everybody see the steerer here between Kuf Samachas and Mishabura Vav here. Make the Mishabura yellow where the first hand is.
Upashit the Davka Beis Safiya v'chulei. That's in Kuf Samachas, and he says, "Eina naser mekachas tefela shekavanatz." He wants to eat both. Veina mekachas. He wants both. It's not lalafes. Over here, Mishabura Sivkat and Vav, he says, "Oh, the gvina hudim bekol davar." When it's lalafes, it's all lalafes. So how do you figure out? So the Mishabura, I don't know, maybe Hagufa. Hagufa, from the fact that the Mishabura, Hagufa, from the fact that Mishabura left it vague, I guess he has a lot of faith in us. A sliver of deli on a cracker, I guess he can't say is lalafes. I guess a piece of herring, I guess he can't say is lalafes. A chumetz is vade lalafes. If it's baked together, anyways, it's one. If you have tuna, I think tuna a lot of times is where the boundary gets obscure. Because sometimes you have those like the store-bought tuna, it's like very shmeary. A lot of times it's mamish like a spread, like a shmiraza, But the people making the house the tuna, a lot of times like a chetz of tuna. It's hard to say that's just lafis. But I'm telling you, it's not going to be a simple thing. Maybe it's totally in the person's das when it's not so simple. And lo barur, the devar is lo barur. I had a shiloh for the oilam. What do you think? Is this exeris akosiv in the Mishabura? He said once it's baked together, like you have a cheesecake or something like that, it's baked together, it's a mezainis. You have a base of the mezainis and you have the cheese, and it's baked together, mezainis. There's a oneness here. Is exeris akosiv? What if I can make a oneness without it being baked together? What's an example? In Daheim, I'll make it even an ice cream sandwich. Who remembers an ice cream sandwich? It was. They still have it. You can't get it over here, but it was those geschmacke like cookies. I'm getting nostalgic. And then it was like a cookie on top, a cookie there, and the ice cream was in the middle. And in camp, if after you played ball and whatever, you only allowed to get one. But whoever remembers. All right. So Everybody else is worrying about the ice. I was worrying, of course, about what bracha are you going to make on these ice cream sandwiches? No? So what bracha do you make on an ice cream sandwich? In other words, do you say that, well, it's clearly layered and you clearly want both? So let's see what we just said. Well, that's going to be a mezainis and shackle, right? Or do you say that, no, I'm getting jealous by Schoenblum. Or do you say no, that just like if it's baked together, it's not exeris akosiv that it's baked together. It's if it becomes one. What's the difference if it's baked together? What's the difference if it's frozen together? That's also a siba that it should be a one bracha. Now, I must admit, I saw in a certain sefer that they asked this question to Rebbe Yashiv, and I'm not going to say the name of the sefer. In general, that sefer is somewhat not so reliable. Klape Psakim from Rebbe Yashiv. And it's clear in this case that they did not explain clearly to Rebbe Yashiv what ice cream sandwiches is. The Chavoy the sefer, I won't say the name of the sefer, but just to give you the point, it was clear that Rebbe Yashiv understood that an ice cream sandwich is baked together. So therefore, that is clearly not going to be an answer to our shaila. If anything, it'll be a raya fakert. Rebbe Yashiv by an ice cream sandwich said, since it's baked together, then it would be a mezainis, and if it's not baked together, it's not a mezainis. So something over there in the entire sefer is a little bit misleading. The oral at Sion, Rabbeinu Agadol Ben Tzina B'Shalom Chelik Beis in Perek Dalet in Ois Chaf, he says what I was thinking is that l'chayra it's not exeris akosiv. Not exeris akosiv. He says it's l'chayra. It's one. There's a oneness. The cookie and the ice cream is a oneness, and it becomes one through the freezing process, and therefore it's called sheyesh bai. Now, there are some children that the way they eat the ice cream sandwich, whoever remembers, is first the cookie and the ice cream and the cookie. It's okay. That could be that they're breaking it apart. That might be all different shmooze. But I would have thought that it requires one bracha, a bari minim zainis. I did see that Rebelsky, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, he seemed to say two brachas. Shulchan Levi, Chelik Aleph, Perek Gimel, Ois Dalet. I thought that was a very big chiddush. I would have thought that it's a oneness, and that the Mishabur is not exeris
akosiv. I'm confused by the Rav. I'm confused. Don't we have Igros Moshe Dalet Mem Gimel, which speaks exactly to ice cream, whatever sandwiches? What do we need anything else for?
So it's like this. Let's see. Ramesh over there is very confusing.
Can we put it on? Can we put it on?
Yeah, sure.
468?
Yeah, no, so I'll tell you the issue. Rav Moshe is not clear. It seems like Rav Moshe might be talking about an ice cream cone.
No, wafers. He says wafers right in front of us.
Let's see. Chaticha shel mezainis nikares v'chashuva sheroi v'chaviva lechol b'fnei atzmai kegon krichim dakim shel grina ice cream wafers. I don't think he means ice cream sandwich.
No.
Ramosha in other tshuvas writes the word sandwich. Is it Ramosha hat gewiss zu schreiben sandwich and du schreibt wafers as ich mein, as Ramosha meant wafer. And ich mein as Ramosha meant an ice cream cone. That's why, even though you know by me, everything is Ramosha. And if there be a Ramosha about ice cream sandwich, I would make in front of the whole entire oilam right now 2 brachas just to show my bittul to Rabbeinu Agadol. But I think Rav Moshe over here is talking about a cone. That's why I didn't mention the Rav Moshe, but Rabbi Gottesman brought it out of me, and rightfully so. He then goes on, he calls it strudel or pie crust. You know, Rav Moshe very well knew how to write ice cream sandwich. I don't know, Ramesh over here. The Olam learned this is an ice cream sandwich?
Rabbeinu, the Welt here in America seems, I can't speak everybody, seems to, it's quoted, Rabbi Force quotes, and everybody quotes this from Moshe is telling you that this is the psak and ice cream sandwiches.
I'm being Merames that I saw all that and I was very surprised. I don't know. And in Svara, I'm very surprised. Everybody knows, I'm not talking about little kids that eat it separately, but everybody knows how do you eat an ice cream sandwich? You eat like this. So it's frozen solid together. So
what's the difference between frozen salad and cooked together? There's no gzeres hakatzav. Rabbi say you learned the whole sugya vikar b'tafel. There's no gzeres hakatzav of being cooked together and turning it into one. There was a graz we mentioned last week that said a svara like that. There's no Mishnah Berurah like that. So what's the pshat? I'm aware that in America they take on that Ramesh is talking about this. I find it to be michudash.
I mean, he said the Shver Svari seems to be going with the Ugar, the Ramah that the Magen rejects because he uses the word chaviv. He says,
right, the whole Ramosha needs a beer. I must admit, it's a difficult Ramosha. But
so, I mean, everybody rejects the chaviv, so that shouldn't be. But he's making a dimyon between pie crusts.
Meaning that's pashut to me that an ice cream and a cone you need two brachos on. You eat it separately. It's two separate things.
Agreed.
You know?
We agree with that. That's called a gavia. This is not a gavia. This is the.
And you should know I'm super evil. I tried to take a little drop of the mezainis first so I could get the kedim and brachos. And it's not pashut. You have to do that. When we learn kedim and brachos, it's not pashut. It could be that since this is the derech of how you eat an ice cream cone, perhaps it's not called that the mezainis is in front of me. You ever see a child eating the ice cream first and then the mezainis, you don't have to be meicha.
Rav Vosner on the bottom right also says mezainis. Rav Vosner says mezainis on ice cream cakes.
So Rav Vosner is in Shevet Alevi Chelik Vav Simin Chav Dalet Ois Aleph, and he has another one in Chelik Zayin Simin Chav Zayin Ois Vav. Now here, I'll read you what he says. There's also something that bothered me a little bit. He says, the fiat klolim of the Mishnah Berurah loy nefe biyachad, and that's it. And given the glida zeh, it's two separate things, two separate brachos. Now, I don't know. I mean, he's taking on the Mishnah Berurah's exeris hakasiv. That's all totally cooked together, and that's it. And then he goes on, he says, kol zeh ma ice karim, anitim by nikar harbe. Okay, that usually is the case. And then he gets involved. Yeah, I'm asking. I'm saying chiddush the like Rabbeinu Gadol Rav Vosner, but I don't think it's a chiddush the like Ramosha. And Mamela Rabben Siyans is not like that. So I definitely would hear as far to pater. I want to read you one more. So a moment.
Let's scroll back up to the top of the page so we can ask the Rav about the bananas.
I see the Abia Omer and Chelik Zayin Simin Lamed Gimel Ois Gimel. He says you make one bracha, like what we're saying that it's a mezainis. Hoiter es aglida. The Rav Vosner makes that chilik. If you look good in the Rav Vosner Tshuva, he's saying the explanation of how we answered the steer in the Mishnah Berurah. He's making basically the same type of chilik. He's making a chilik of if you're giving a lot of merkachas or you're giving a little merkachas. That's in essence how he's answering up the steer in the Mishnah Berurah, which is why in essence he said that on an ice cream sandwich you make two brachas. I'm just being moisif that if it's being eaten as one and it's baked together and stuck together, mali baked, mali stuck. Okay, but I admit that perhaps that's a chiddush. That maybe should pater. No, they should pater. Ice cream, cookies with ice cream where it's mamish reingemished. So that l'chayra is the regular klalim of kol sheyesh by mechameshes minei dagan, and l'chayra pashidi should make a mezainis. I don't know why the Welt, I think, on cookies and ice cream doesn't. I have no thought why not, especially the as far that we're saying now. That frozen is called kivyachol baked together. It becomes a oneness. So versteht sich, that's called sheyesh by mechameshes minei dagan. And
I was talking about ice cream that has cake in those
cookies and cream. In the Haim, it doesn't even have cookies
in it.
Little, yeah, but sometimes it's mamish mesh the rain cookies. Sometimes it's like more the bits. So sometimes you have just like shticklich of cookies and you wind up having separate pieces of ice cream totally. It's okay. So then we could talk. That's maybe separate foods.
but the way cookies and cream was all mixed in. You have little bits of cookies all over the place, right? Now, what is cookie dough ice cream? Is it dough? If it's dough, so then it's shackle. There's no question. I just don't know what it is.
What's the question? What dough?
I was just showing on the screen cookie dough ice cream. Now, I don't know exactly what cookie dough ice cream is. Meaning, is it dough? If it's dough, then it's shackle, and then there's no shaila.
Dough is shackle?
Dough, regular dough, we learned is shackle.
Oh, dough is regular
Plain dough.
Shackle.
Yeah.
Plain dough, it's shackle, right?
Yeah. Now, but it's very late. I wanted to tell you one more thing, which is a very famous shaila about. Okay, you know what? It's late. I'll make a sikkum next week in the first minute. My minute is the Eibishter's day is 1,000 years. So my minute's not 1,000 years, but maybe the first minute I just want to talk about. I'll talk a mitzvah Shem about Mayim L'Tzamai, but maybe I want to just mention Blineder. Maybe we'll see if I have time. We'll see how the share goes. I want to just mention the shaila of the chocolate-covered raisins. It's the one thing we didn't talk about Nikar V'Tapel, but to do it now, I would need about 5-6 minutes, and the Oilam probably doesn't have the ability. Correct?
Before the Rav goes, put back to that page because we've been bothered by this other psak of Rav Moshe. Maybe you can explain to us. Pesach, please put back the screen. Chelik Dalid, there Moshe says bananas and they're right there on the upper left. Bananas and cereal. You make a bracha, adama on the bananas, because he says it's bananas and daisa, which we call oatmeal.
Yeah, Dalid Mem Gimel, right?
Yeah, it's right there on the screen. Dalid Mem Gimel. That one paragraph. Yes, Shem Paris for bananas. And nobody understands this because why isn't it a tuffle? Isn't it there because you want oatmeal, but you also want to taste the bananas in the oatmeal? So how does Rav explain this?
I always learned that it's because they're a big shtiklach. So Mamela becomes, he's having the mezainis and the shtiklach. Now, the only question you could ask is, wait a minute, but what happened to the Mishnah Berurah? Didn't the Mishnah Berurah tell us that if it's all mixed together and whatever? I just wonder out loud if in the tzura of how you eat, when you have. Could you just read me the lashon? I'm for some reason I'm not. My papers don't have this for Moshe. Well, just read me the lashon.
See the screen? You see the screen?
Yeah, I see the screen. 1 minute. Let me just get closer.
Yes, on Paris to my bananas. They're on the upper left.
Yeah, 1 minute. Let me just make my screen bigger. Now I see it. Now I got it. Paris can I bananas. Now, I mean, look, I must tell you, this is a hard one because this depends if you're Hungarian or Polish. I mean, on my father's side, I'm Hungarian, and I remember the bananas in the cereal. So Mamela, I understand Ramosha. It was all ganze shtickle and das, and it was, but the Polish, I mean, they would it was little bits, like little raisin lazachen and das. So okay.
Okay, Ramosha is not Russian anymore. He was from Lower East Side.
Yeah, Ramosha, I don't know. You have to know first you have to know what Ramosha's wife was. It's more important that than anything else. Ramosha's wife was from Luban. I don't know. Like that.
No, this is written in the Lower East Side. Tafshin Lam Zayin. So Mustama, it means that what the Rav said, it's big pieces of bananas. But if the banana is sliced into 12 pieces like my mother used to do, a whole banana, then what would you agree with this psak? You make 2 brachos?
No, Mama's a little shtiklach. It'll be like raisins. There's nobody on raisin bran.
What's raisin bran?
That's what I'm saying. There's nobody on raisin bran that's not making a mezainis.
It's Pasha making mezainis of raisin bran.
It's Pasha. Yeah, it's Pasha. Yeah. I'm saying even the minute. Forget in the halacha it's Pasha, and you see that's what the ganze Welt does. So
when does the bananas become raisin bran? That's the question. How thin
basically that's always going to be a shverkai. Yeah.
Okay, can the Rav make a sikum for us, please?
100% Bezos Hashem. First of all, we saw a tremendous insight. If you did not know it was coming, so then it's not pattered because it's not the pshat that the tafel dafnishkin bracha. It needs a bracha. It just gets a bracha of the ikar. Nafkamina is perhaps by medicine because medicine, a flavored medicine doesn't have a taste.
So therefore, excuse me, the medicine itself doesn't have a taste and doesn't get a bracha. So maybe the tuffle doesn't get a bracha. No, the tuffle would need a bracha because the ikr didn't have a bracha, so therefore you don't have a bracha on your tuffle. However, we saw other reasons. Maybe mat emes, that reason was shver. Maybe it just doesn't have a shame of a food. I said today, the kids really like it. So it's a little bit hard to say it's not a food. Maybe you should at least pater it or something. We saw the shaila of a chaviv, Ramah held on a chaviv, you would make the, actually before that, we saw that you might be able to take it out of the mixture, and that was my eitzah by Chalit. We saw that a chaviv, excuse me, we saw that a chaviv, if it's a tuffle, if the tuffle is a chaviv, the Ramah held you make a bracha, the Mishnah Berurah says not to do that, and now that we're zeicha to the or zarua, we see the Magen Avraham is correct. If you have the tuffle tchila, first of all, you're doing the wrong thing because the Mishnah Berurah says don't do that. The nafkamina I brought was if you had a vodka and you didn't realize it and your throat was burning, and now you want to have bread, so then that's a tuffle. Okay, but where's your bracha, Rabbi Yid? What bracha would you make? You'd make a shahakal because now the bread is tuffle and it didn't get a bracha, but it's a shahakal because it lost its chshivas of a food. Now you give it only a shahakal. Then we saw Yushalmi could go Mishmavin. He makes only a mezainis and don't eat the pickle first. Mishaloi Mavin, he makes a mezainis and he makes a bar damno. We saw nafkamina tremendous stira in the Mishnah Berurah when it came to mezainis, layered mezainis. That was the side. What's the din of layered mezainis? If they're baked together, no ein bracha. If they're not, come to Mishnah Berurah and toilet if it's malafis or not. And that's the answer to the stira. If there's a lot kanira, then that's about the separate brachas. If there's a little bit, it's just a shmir, then about its brachas, it's tuffle to the mezainis. Nafkamina is, could you say it's not exeris a kosiv and then an ice cream sandwich, you would make one bracha mezainis? Is Rav Moshe not like that? I don't think so. Rav Moshe seems to be talking about something else, a cone and this. I admit that the Shevet HaLevi is not like that, but I think it is a little bit of a chiddush. If there's time, cookies and cream, ice cream, that l'chayr is zikra mezainis. And the dough, if it's dough, then it's a shahakal. But if it's cookies and cream and there's cookies in every bite, then avada to mezainis. It's a shem. If there's time, next time I'm going to try to mention for one moment the shaila of chocolate covered almonds and raisins.
Okay.